Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Joy, Love, and Healing podcast. I'm Jay Bradley, and I'm happy you tuned in. We had some barking dogs, so we are doing a wonderful new take. And I'm welcoming my friend, Carrie. I'd love to introduce you to her and talk even more about Pilates and all things healing. Carrie Miller Smaczny has been a movement practitioner for over 20 years. She's a retired choreographer and dancer with an MFA in dance from University of California, Irvine. Her work includes embodiment, somatic approaches, movement theory, breathwork healing, fascia release, patterning, proprioception exercises, Pilates, barre, and functional training. She currently teaches in Paradise Valley, Arizona at a local Pilates studio, as well as her own boutique online teacher education courses. She has 2 children, a husband of 21 years, and 2 mini dachshunds, which I have met online. They're very cute. Hi, Carrie.
And they're very, very yippy. So thank you for having me. And I'm super excited to be here and talk about healing and love, joy, peace, all of it.
All of it. It's so funny because speaking of dogs, right? Every time we have done sessions, dogs are really drawn to energy work. What is that? They're just so in tune because I remember every time we've done sessions, it's like they end up either walking around you or sitting on your chest.
I don't know. It's one of those things where I think the energy and the connection, right? And not giving us presence. So when I drop in, I feel like they're like, oh, she's here. You know, she's really with us. She's not doing other things. Yeah, it is fascinating. I'm sure there's research.
Yeah, I'm sure there is. But it's not uncommon when I've worked with clients to, by the end, there's animals sitting on them and running around them and just wondering what's going on. They can really feel the intense energy. So
it's awesome.
Well, let's talk. I've had a lot of guests on the podcast, and most of the modalities that they talk about, I've tried or I've experienced, but I'm not going to lie, I have not tried Pilates. And so.
Okay. So what is it?
Let's talk.
Right?
What is it?
What is it? So Pilates is a movement modality, and Joseph Pilates came from Germany, and he came to the U.S. And in the 1940s through the 1950s, 60s, he died in the late 70s. He created movement. So initially, it was created during the war for soldiers to rehabilitate. So he used springs on from the beds, and he hooked them up to poles and put contraptions for their arms and started creating these exercises. So he was ahead of his time, and he created multiple pieces. So you have a reformer, you have the mat work, you have the chair, you have the armchair, you have all these arc barrels. So there's to support the body and also really square off the body. And then there's a movement philosophy behind that. So you have control and precision and breath and concentration. And it's very, very specific in terms of where your body lives in each exercise. So sometimes people say yoga is like Pilates. The only similarity is that it has a set protocol of movements that are done in a sequence. That's the only similarity. And we have very specific positions of the body that impact the fascia system. And we do these bio-movement patterns of the body that have an animal-like or primal quality. There's pushing and pulling. It's dynamic stretching. So it's a combination of all of those ideas. And it's strength and power. So he was a boxer. He was into martial arts. It was not designed for women, although that's the majority of what we see now. And it started in New York. He had a studio in New York. He wore his white briefs. He smoked a cigar. I mean, at that era, he worked with a lot of dancers. He was very flamboyant. He had a very interesting life, lots of lovers, lots of not such great things, but he created this method and these teachers underneath him, which was really interesting. They were multiracial, right? So we had Latino, we had African-American, we had, the Fletcher method that Fletcher ended up in Hollywood, and he taught West Coast. So there was these branches that split off, and being a dancer, this is how I got introduced to it in the 90s. So it was part of my program as a young dancer at Texas Christian.
Amazing. Yeah. I want to talk more about your dancing and what drew, well, let's talk now. What drew you to it specifically? Was it because of how amazing you felt doing the process? What was it?
So, 18 years old, we had a course called In Your Mind's Eye. And I think it was like at 8 a.m. And it was just, always came after the lacrosse party. And I was the night before and I was tired. So we laid on the floor and we learned all these movement modalities. We learned Feldenkrais and Alexander technique and the release technique and Pilates. So I was introduced to it at 18, 19, didn't really stick until I went through some injuries in college. And then after college, I needed another modality that wasn't so body intense on me as a teacher. So I love to teach movement, and this had that sensation of ebb and flow. There was a sense of space and design and collaboration, right? So as a dancer, you work creating artwork with many dancers. So being in a teaching kind of style and teaching movement was something that I had done a lot since age 16. So yeah, this is just kind of a natural progression after I got out of school to teach movement and keep my body without putting too much stress on the joints and muscles.
You were so in tune. I've seen you even at our retreat. You just notice where people are holding on. You're so knowledgeable of the body. I would love you to analyze me sometime because I'm like sore and stiff everywhere. It's amazing. So you've learned so much about the body through Pilates.
Yeah, so Pilates, was one method. I'm also trained in the somatics of Barre, which is the developmental movement patterns. So it was a lot of time on the floor, feeling the head to tail connection and the body half connection and cross lateral. And think of a baby learning to move. They roll in their belly and they stretch and reach and contract and, push and pull, those kinds of things, those undulations of the body. So I'm also have a background in that and language that comes around using language that's neutral, that allows people to find expression in movement. So that's another layer. So I came to the Pilates work with that already kind of under my belt. And as a choreographer, also, I was really interested in vulnerability. So how can we make movement that is very heart-centered and not just imitation, right? So like, I'm not just in the gym just pounding out my bicep curls, trying to build strength, but that there's that mindfulness in every moment.
Yeah, that's really where I'd love to dig into, because this podcast is really about, doing the inner work and the energy of things. And you talk a lot about fascia.
Yes.
And I'm not even entirely sure what that means, but more importantly, how is fascia related to not only physical, but like the emotional and spiritual?
Yeah. So fascia was understood by the massage therapy community and also these early practitioners of Pilates and Barre and Somatic. So they knew intuitively that the muscles it was not our sensory organ. Yeah. So fascia is our biggest sensory organ. The nerves are in it. It drives the lymph to the lymph nodes, and it flushes the toxins. So it's tissue, it's fluid, it's three-dimensional. It's found in every part of our body, and it weaves to our organs, and we're completely affected in all ways. So when we do that training, that mind-body training, we're training the fascia system with brain mapping, right? So that what are the mechanics of how we do movement? Layer one, right? So then the second sensation is that feeling sensation. Like, what am I feeling inside when I do that? Right? And then the third is that deepening, going deeper, right, into that embodiment practice. So if you know the repertoire and you're moving inside, all of a sudden you're in a moving meditation, and then you can drop into that felt stillness, even though you're in movement. And it's similar to yoga. So once you have this sense of trust in your body, right? There's a sense of trust. Then you can start to be vulnerable in that movement.
Beautiful. Yeah, we haven't known each other that long, but your work, as it should be, I think we're all evolving and growing and expanding.
Yeah.
But you've really been moving more, as we know, into breath work, into sound healing. I'm just curious. I know you're doing this for you primarily, like to expand and grow within yourself. But how do you see bringing this, and why isn't like have there been some missing pieces for you?
Right. So I started more macro, right? So in a way with the movement patterns, Bartinian work, and then the Pilates, right? So the body, and there's connectivity. Then I learned the fascia that came in around 2018. And then we went in with the fascia, we started looking at the diaphragm. And this is how it got more micro. And then I got really interested in some of the somatic breathwork exercises, and they really changed the lines of tension. So we call the fascial model the biotensegrity model. And they really changed more than movement. And I was like, no way. No way. How can this be? So then you get into that, right? Like, is fascia more? Yes. So if my fascia is bound, because what's binding it? Emotional, structural, toxic stress. If it's bound and I can't breathe, then my fascial lines aren't all doing what they're supposed to. And they're not able to take gravity because I'm holding, right? That I'm holding something. So through that somatic training, and then coming in and studying the breath work with you, where it's really stillness, it's true stillness, then that energetic piece, I got to just let it go. That last little layer that was stuck. And by working with you, I discovered that there is multi-generational trauma that I had no idea that existed, and I've got to read so much about that. So the body's really complex, right? It's not just let's come and work out. That's layer one. Like, we need this movement in our country, so get them in. Let's just get people moving, step one. But then we have to start to progress into these next levels to truly heal.
Right. Yes. Big believer in that. Big believer that our body's speaking to us, and most injury, most inflammation, right? Most dis-ease. There's an emotional, energetic component underneath there somewhere. If we're able to get still enough and really listen, and I guess I've been so blown away, if I could just say, by your healing energy.
Oh, thank you.
I know when we worked together, your hands began to really send out light, and you began to receive a lot. And I always, when I see that, I know it's people with real healing abilities through their hands. And you have such a direct connection to spirit. So people would be very, very lucky to work with you, having all of this knowledge, but also helping them tap in to something even deeper.
Yeah, I think that, for me, working so in the fitness industry, right, for so long, a lot of us have these natural qualities that are pretty undeveloped and untapped. And it's like the power of, I had a client that's like, how did you do that? You just placed your hand on me. And there is, in fascia, there is called piezoelectricity. So when my energy meets your energy with intention, right, I have to be intentional about that. And not everyone has that ability to share that vibration. It literally changes the integrity of the tissue, and the energy lifts up to meet that vibration. So that awareness of having the awareness is step one. So now, as a teacher educator, because that's where I spend most of my time, and then I do have some private clients here in Paradise Valley and Scottsdale, is it's really encouraging that light, because when you've been in this business a long time, you start to see the magic of the work, and then you can also see those restricted places, right? Yeah, it's a beautiful place to be. Yeah.
Well, you have so many tools in your toolbox now, and probably adding more as we go, but I guess there are different techniques that resonate with different people. Right. I personally think breathwork is for everybody, but if it's not, then we have other ways to access that as well. Right. Yeah.
And, no one modality will work for a long time. So for me, I think what changed was COVID. We had it in my household. We had a lot of stress. The cortisol was heavy, and I couldn't get it out of my body. And it wasn't just like exercise more. And as I'm coming into mid-40s, right, and this time of my life and perimenopause and all the changes that happen in midlife for women, I couldn't just drive. I couldn't just push harder. I actually had to sit still. And that's when working with you and that breath work was really mind blowing for me, because I was like, there's so much power in listening to myself, quieting my mind, and finding that dynamic diaphragmatic breathing, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I always say most of us live from here up, right? From our chest up. And shallow breath, shallow life. So just deepening that helps to deepen our experience. It can also deepen the pain. And there's a lot of stuff that we hold on to, but
right.
Hey, it's better to feel it and let it go.
Yeah.
And pretend it's not there.
Right. For sure. So in terms of your practice, do you have a movement practice that you do regularly?
I mean, I'm an old fitness buff. I work out 6 to 7 days a week on weights, cardio, very traditional workouts.
Yeah. But that's great. So you're keeping everything moving, and then you have your breath work as the stillness. But do you do anything else besides breath work too?
Well, yeah. And of course, stretching as much as I can. Never enough stretching. I need to do more. Breath work is my main, I do short meditations each morning as well. And napping is my spiritual practice of choice.
No, but rest is super good. We need I think it's a 43% of rest in a day.
Oh, yeah. It's a way to turn off the mind sometimes. It's a little bit easier than just sitting and meditating. So
yeah, I agree. Quietness, for sure.
Actually, let's talk about that, because you brought up something about movement and stillness going hand in hand, and you touched on it, but
yeah, so having two sides of the coin, and having a second practice, right? So I was only in the movement practice as a former professional dancer, just dancing all the time. Even in the fitness industry, the message is just work out more, work out more. How much more can you get in a day? And that people are exhausted, right? So what are we chasing? A lot of times clients are chasing the scale, right? To get the numbers down. And that's not a holistic,
some men.
or up for men, right? Muscle bulk, right? To lift up. Women maybe to drop the numbers in most of my case, my female group. And so getting people to move past, right, the first layer of what our goals are, what they think their goals are, and moving into that strength, inner power, and coming into a restorative practice, or even a class once a week, or at the end of the class. So we take about 10 minutes to just drop in, and I'm able to hold the space for them, right? So I'm with them. I'm like, this is what we're doing, and this is how we're going to do it. And just getting everyone to focus in on that stillness, because we spend a lot of time, as you know, being so busy. I remember when I started with you to drop down and breathe, it was like, oh my gosh, she wants me to do this for 45 minutes. There's no way. I'm not going to make it.
You have a lot going on with your kids, and so much more in your career. And yeah. And I've seen benefits as well as my clients. And it's leading them from a very physical practice to having a second idea of the stillness. So I'm still evolving into that. And especially for the teacher trainees that I've been working with and teaching assistants. So they've been at Pilates a long time, and to bring that breath work in. This morning we had a session about, love and relationships, and to listen, and it's just a really special gift to hear that side, not just like, oh, I feel this is achy, or I want to work, my core. So to go a little deeper, that's why we're human, right? And those deep connections. Are most of your students open to exploring some of these other modalities?
Most. We're still stepping in bit by bit. The teachers that I've been working with in that arena, they just, they don't have a choice, because I'm like, this is part of our program in terms of somatics. We're going to talk about, developmental patterns, and we're going to do breath work, and we're going to do fascia, and then we're going to do Pilates. We're going to do it all. So we're going to tap all the buckets. I
think Joseph Pilates would be really proud. He'd be like, bring in the emotional, bring in the breath, bring in all of these pieces, right? Because we're so rounded. We need all of it.
And perhaps the time has changed, right? So we're in a season that there is a lot of energy in the world that causes anxiety to, right? The
So
elections, take a pick, whatever you want to pick.
Yeah.
So,
A lot of inner turmoil for many, many people, stress being internalized, and that we need a way to let it out. And just working out and just physically being active, at least for most people, for me, is not enough, for sure.
and there is, a little bit of wisdom, I think, as you come into that second half of life of wanting some quietness and stillness to quiet the noise in your mind. Perhaps it's a bit of that. I don't know if I would have had the maturity to sit down in my 20s and really focus in this way. Yeah. I don't know.
Well, you do now, and that's all that counts, right?
Yeah.
You are probably one of the most compassionate people I've met. I have your beautiful heart. During our advanced training, it said you are loved. And I look at that every morning, and I think of you. And you just have such a beautiful way of connecting to compassion, I feel, and to love. And I know you follow Jesus as well. And I'd be really interested in talking about that because, a lot of people grew up with a whole bunch of mixed messages around religion, and we don't need to delve too much. But, I would love you to bring that piece in around, because the master healer himself, Jesus, and how that fits in with love and compassion.
So being a mom, it's really interesting to raise kids up. And the most important thing is for them to know that they're loved, like by me. And so maybe that's where it starts, is as a mom. And so perhaps that lens is on how I see the world. There's so many stories, right? When you start to listen to people's stories and you hear about their childhood, and it's pretty heartbreaking. And there's a lack of love. So biblically, Jesus he came to bring love to everyone, and his love is unconditional for all people. And so you're just covered in love. That was his mission, was to send love and share love. And for me, operating out of that sense of compassion, it's incredibly freeing, because I'm able to meet people where they're at and hold the space and be a listener. So I tend to create space where we can talk about trauma and release it without having to go down the hole of psychology. And so as a Christian, we talk about the Spirit living within us. So it's not really necessarily even me, but I'm a vessel of him and his work and his light. So biblically, when they talk about laying hands, he does that all through the Bible, to heal people. Yeah. And that's part of the work in the church, is that everyone has a job and a spiritual gift, and God has given us those. And it's our job to walk out our purpose with integrity, right? And love and compassion. And we all have different gifts. So I've known this about myself probably since I was about 16. Yeah. That I've had this gift and understanding of compassion. So thank you for your kind words and bringing this up.
Yeah, no, it's important. And also, I was thinking about this morning as I was writing my newsletter around the idea of miracles and physical healing, and how it's actually quite normal and accepted. We've, moved to this place where we think, oh my God, this is, incredible. But that Jesus, for example, master healer, right, was able to transform people's health. And so it's beautiful to see people getting more in touch with that. It's actually our natural ability to help people heal, to be catalysts, to receive that healing. It takes belief, it takes faith, it takes trust. But when we can connect with all of those, so it's nice to see the shift. I feel like more and more people, hopefully, are starting to believe that these changes are possible.
And it takes some vulnerability, right? So I'm reading Lighter by Young Pueblo, and he talks about, finding the right modality, finding the support and trust. And, you really have to find the right people in order to work through the healing. it's, you have to find what resonates with you, and it's not there is no quick fix. It's just a lot of 1 degree turns until you start to find that momentum of what works for you. And oftentimes when I see clients, if there's something that just doesn't feel aligned to me, I will refer, because I know exactly where my gifts are and who I'm for. And I do have, by the 3rd session, I have an intuitive sense of if this is going to be a relationship that I can really help. So there has to come, you have to come with an open heart, an open fascia, an open. You have to be open to receiving in order for it to be a collaborative process.
Yes. Yes. I talk about a story of a recent client who, basically eliminated some of her fibroid cysts and within 2 sessions. And, it was her belief. I mean, obviously I helped to be a catalyst with her, but her belief was a miracle shift is going to take place today.
Yeah.
I know it. And I could literally feel that shift. I knew something happened. So it's always fun, right? When we actually get physical evidence that this energy work can make a difference.
And Western culture a little less than it was, right? Maybe biblical times, there was a bit more belief of that power of God and the power of the Creator. So it is, I think, it's interesting to be a healer. That's a new word that's kind of in my vocabulary. I was very safe in the movement arena. Yes. However, I'm a facilitator, a guide, like you said, it comes through you. It's not because of you. It's not your putting your effort into it. It's just that you're able to pass that message and hold the space.
Yes. And raise your belief as high as your client and match their energy and vibration. And and let the rest, whatever's going to happen will happen. But
praying those bold prayers. Yeah.
Yeah. I was saying that the days of the guru are done, we're all level playing field. We're all messengers and we all have the gift. I really believe that.
Yeah. And you do an excellent job of calling people into your work and, making these breathwork trainings hybrid. They're available. You can come into Palm Springs. You can work online. So you've taught so many people around the world your method. And do you start to see a little bit of an effect of that, or do you hear stories? Yeah.
Yeah, I do. I'm like a proud dad. Every time I see people doing classes or running, retreats, and it's like, even having a piece of that is just such a great feeling because they're going on to help so many others too.
And did you feel called to do that? I mean, what took you from being a practice, doing a self-practice into teaching teachers? I
was asked by a bunch of students at one point, I love the way you teach. Can you show me your methods? So it kind of pulled me in naturally.
Oh, that's really cool. I didn't know that story.
And then the first one I did, I couldn't believe how high I was, how much I loved teaching teachers, coaches, healers, working with them. And I also didn't get the best support in my training with breathwork.
Okay.
And so I wanted to do something different. I wanted to make sure that they knew I was there, that I was supporting them, that, that we could do this together. Because I know a lot of people in this industry too lack confidence or self-worth, or who am I to help people with their deep issues, So just a reminder that I love to remind people that they have it inside of them.
Right. Like being a good friend and using whatever their gifts are, if it's compassion or if it's just hands-on or holding the space in their own unique way and encourage. Yeah, you really encourage us to have our own voice within your work. So very powerful.
Well, there's no one way. And you've just been a great example of that. You're bringing so many amazing gifts and modalities and we're called in different directions. So really just, if people could just trust, right? Trust the path and trust that they have a unique voice and unique gifts. to help others.
Well, you're a leader in that. And so I really feel that for you, you're very clear, like as a vessel that to trust and faith have been, I think, a really hard for most people. And even for myself during this season of the pandemic has been hard to believe because there's been so much uncertainty, and to step back into trust and faith have been big ones. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. Speaking of trust and faith, I have a few questions, but first I'd like to ask if there's anything else you want to share about your work or Pilates or Fascia or anything at all.
Just if you don't have a movement practice yet, it only takes 5 minutes to start. So starting is always the hardest part. And I have a lot of friends that are super skilled in that area that love helping people start. So if this is anything, maybe an encouragement for you to start moving, whether it's a 5-minute walk or, just start basic stretching, because movement does make us feel better. And then you'll be able to sit more quietly once that energy is out of the body. So don't be scared to start your movement practice.
I love that.
Movement heals is one of Joseph's favorite, most famous quotes. Movement heals. And for me, it's movement heals, and there's a little more to that. But for some people, just starting the movement and awakening the body and feeling the muscles contract gives you that confidence and that centeredness that really makes you start to feel better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a beautiful, beautiful message for people. So what brings you the most joy in your life?
This is a really tough question. Because the mom in me wants to say my kids and my husband and my family.
Yeah.
But I am, as you know, I'm such a dog lover, and they have been such a big part of my heart. And my dogs bring me joy every single day, no matter what I'm doing. And this is our second set of dachshunds. So we've had dogs now for 25 years, and we just love animals and love dogs specifically. Yeah. So they always bring me so much joy in the morning. I get my coffee, I do my morning meditation, and I have 2 little fur balls on my lap, and it's heaven.
You're not the first person to say dogs for that question. So,
but it feels a little, yeah. I mean, and then movement, right? So movement and breath, stillness, both of those together. But yes, the dog energy is important in my life.
Yeah, I love that. Well, speaking of love, what do you love most about yourself?
I love the fact that I'm persistent. So I know that it always doesn't come easily, but I know that with persistence, just like starting meditation and starting breath work, that just a little bit at a time really can change things. And I know that not everybody has that. So because of my persistence, I also create accountability for others. I think that's built into my job. So yeah, persistence.
Yeah, I love that. And then the word healing, what is your definition of healing?
Yeah, so this one has changed a little bit. It's to allow things to move through you. And it doesn't, we don't have to hold on to the heaviness, just to allow it to move through you like mist or cloud. And it has to have an action step. Ooh. And it has to be intentional.
I really like that.
Yeah, so there's a softness in it, right, of gentleness. And I know you talk a lot about gentleness and self-compassion and kindness, but to allow the healing, allow things to move through you instead of, holding on to that, like the body holds on, right, to allow it to move through.
Yeah. And
that takes authenticity, that takes consciousness.
Yeah, it does. And it takes courage. It takes a lot of things.
Yeah, it takes courage too. Yeah, to heal.
Yeah. That's beautiful. Well, I want people to find you and hopefully work with you and ask questions. So what's the best way for people to reach you?
So I have a website right now. It's carriemillerpilates.com, but at some point that's going to move into a little more of a movement and stillness kind of vibe. But right now it's carriemillerpilates.com, and I'm on Instagram at Carrie Miller Pilates. Yeah. This is so fun. Thank you.
Beautiful Instagram posts. I love your posts.
Thank you.
Informative and, beautifully balanced.
So, that page is more about being a resource.
Yeah.
And sharing the work.
That was great chatting.
Thank you, Jay. It's always great to see you. And it's such a pleasure. And I love what you're doing and how you're spreading your energy into the world and through breath work and love and compassion and healing. So thank you for having me today.
Oh, thank you so much. And we will talk very soon. And thanks, everyone, for tuning in. I really appreciate it. We'll see you on the next episode of Joy, Love, and Healing. Bye.
Sounds good.